Gindo's Games! Hey everybody, it's Gindo Keshi here with another guide for you today on the topic of warding. This one is very, very important to doing well in League of Legends. Wards stop ganks. Wards keep things from getting stolen. Wards save lives. And before we get into the meat of things, let me make one thing clear. Warding is not the job of only the support. Everyone should be doing it, regardless of what role they have. The only exception to this is the AD carry during the laning phase, as they have someone else around to keep track of that. If I ever hear one of you saying it's only the support's job, then I need you to do the following. Go to your local grocery store. Purchase the largest fish you can find. A tuna is preferable, but a mackerel will do in a pinch. Hand it to a friend, and have them smack you upside the head with it, for you are a dunce deserving of ritual fish slapping. Warding is everyone's job, and the sooner you understand this, the better off you'll be. Fortunately for you, warding as a whole should be easier and more common as a group, with the addition of Sightstone, Ruby Sightstone, and the free ward from Explorer, all in addition to what we already have. For those of you who've never seen a ward, by the way, first off, welcome to the game. But second, they look like this. When you place it, they go invisible after a brief moment and sit there for 3 minutes, granting you vision of the area. They don't have hit points and instead take 3 actual basic attacks to kill, regardless of how strong you are. Now, on to actual warding. In addition to the commonly understood objective of knowing where the enemy is, warding certain places have specific goals. They can stop ganks, they can protect secondary objectives, and they can stop your jungle from being invaded. Wards protecting secondary objectives, that is to say, Dragon and Baron Nashor, are the most common because not only are they important as objectives, they also give sight in case of ganks coming down the river, and give vision of one jungle entrance each. These wards are less advantageous when the Dragon or Baron are down, so you could very easily skip them for something more specific to your needs. Use your brain meats when you ward, you know? Later in the game, you might also ward over the wall into the pit if it's too dangerous to go around. This is useful when trying to steal the Baron or Dragon from the enemy. Conversely, when taking it for yourself, if you know the other guys are aware of it, you might drop a ward into the jungle to see them coming. Top and bottom lane, as the map is mirrored, have much the same areas that they want to keep warded. The difference really is where the burden of warding lies. Bottom lane's wards are generally controlled by the support, where top generally shares that duty with the jungler. In either case, these are the lanes that generally keep their respective Dragon or Baron warded. If that objective hasn't spawned, they can usually drop the river ward in the bush just outside their lane if they are afraid to go out too far, or here, just outside the Baron or Dragon's den. This spot covers the river as well as the entrance to the tribush. The tribush itself is also very important to cover, especially for those whose side of the jungle it's on. If the enemy jungler can sneak around behind you through it, you'll be in quite a lot of trouble. In addition to those outside the lane though, it's also often important to ward the bushes in your lane against the wall. Junglers can sometimes sneak into them while your minions are out of sight. In bottom lane, they can be especially important to control in case of supports like Blitzcrank and Leona, who tend to sit there and try to zone you out, waiting for you to walk into killing range. Wards can also be teleported to for ganks, and the enemy won't see it if they can't see in the bush. We recently went up against a team with all teleports, and guess what they like to do? Over, and over, and over. Mid lane is honestly pretty simple. You can go up, and you can go down. Your allies generally have the far river entrances covered, so you only have 2 to do yourself. There's the entrance to the enemy jungle next to their Wraith camp, and the curved bush across from yours. This covers the 2 jungle entrances, and should therefore keep you generally safe. If you're feeling exceptionally paranoid about your enemies catching you out while doing this, there's always the good old newbie standby of warding the bushes right next to your lane. Those aren't necessarily bad, they just don't cover as much. Sometimes you just don't want to leave your lane. Within the jungle, you of course have 2 important things to cover. If you can ward the enemy's blue and red buff, you will have some awesome control over them, knowing where they are, where they're going, and give you the opportunity to kill them and steal the buffs for yourself. For extra sneakitude points, smite it over the wall and never show your face. When warding these, as always, be sure to try and position your ward for maximum coverage. At the blue, for example, Put your ward at the tip of the curve, rather than on either side of it. This gives you vision of several paths around the jungle, in addition to the buff itself. You can also use them while being particularly aggressive at level 1, or if you fear early game invasions into your jungle. A ward in front of your wraiths, for example, will stop them from being stolen, as well as block one of the 2 paths to your red buff. Most of these points stay relevant throughout the game, but some do not. The ones in or near the edge of lanes are considerably less important once towers are down over there. Fighting tends to focus a lot more on the middle lane and in the jungle, so certain other points that we haven't mentioned become important. In particular, here and here. If the enemy has you on the defensive, trying to push down your second or inhibitor tower, these are likely the spots they will want to jump you from, or escape into. The same goes for when you're on the offensive. Covering these spots while running down the lane will keep you from getting ambushed too. There's a couple extra tricks you can do with wards as well. We've already mentioned teleporting to them for ganks, but did you know that sometimes you can throw them farther than their intended range? It's true. This is especially useful during dangerous portions of the laning phase. Stand next to a wall and drop the ward inside of the wall as far from you as possible. If it's more than 50% way through, that is to say, it would be farther for it to go toward you than to go the other way and be clear of the wall, then it will be shoved all the way across. This is a neat trick, but it does require a bit of practice to do properly. Another thing to note is your indicator. If you're placing wards too quickly, sometimes you'll drop it outside of a bush you mean to place it in. It happens to all of us, don't worry. But remember that the target indicator will change color over bushes. This will let you know if it will go inside or not. While getting basic sight for yourself is good, also remember that you can and should counter the enemy's wards. Vision wards, also called pink wards, let you see invisible things, including wards, traps, and Teemos. They also act otherwise like regular wards, they're just a bit more expensive. If you either know that an enemy has warded a spot, or simply know that a certain spot is or should almost always be warded, like in front of Dragon, a vision ward will let you take their sight and replace it with your own, as well as give a nice little chunk of money. An Oracle's Extract also gives your character the ability to see invisible things until you die, or for 5 minutes, whichever comes first. This is useful and quite common in competitive play for clearing out multiple wards all at once without having to guess where the enemy placed it. Think about who on your team should get it though. A player who finds themselves caught and killed a lot should not be the one buying the oracles. While these are all great rules to abide by, remember to use those brain meats I mentioned and be creative. If you really need vision of something right now, drop a ward. Don't ignore it just because I didn't list it here. And that's all there really is to say about wards. Now that you know, go use them. But first, click the like button below and subscribe for future content. Yay, self-promotion. I'd sincerely appreciate it. Till then, I've been Gin, and you've been watching me talk about a video game. Bye.